They say your life can change in an instant. I always thought that was just something people said, you know? A dramatic line in a movie, whispered by a character staring out at a stormy sea, until it happened to me. One minute, I was blissfully planning a future with the man I loved, the man I'd given 5 years of my heart to. We were picking out imaginary paint swatches for a hypothetical nursery we weren't even sure we wanted yet, but it was our hypothetical, whispered about late at night, full of shared dreams. And well, the next, I was staring at a single, innocuous-looking text message on his phone. A message that was anything but innocuous, and the world as I knew it just shattered. It wasn't a gentle crack, like ice on a pond. It was an explosion, a detonation that ripped through the foundations of everything I believed to be true. And the shrapnel? It's still finding its way out, months later, tiny, sharp reminders. This isn't just a story about a cheating boyfriend. Oh, it's definitely about that, don't get me wrong. The betrayal, the lies, the sheer, gut-wrenching audacity of it all. It's all here. But it's also about what happens after the bomb goes off. It's about the collateral damage, the people you never expected to be caught in the blast radius, and the terrifying, disorienting process of becoming a person you don't quite recognize, forced to pick up the pieces of a life that suddenly feels alien. If you think you know how these stories go, the tears, the anger, the eventual moving on, trust me, you don't know this one. Because what I found in the wreckage wasn't just heartbreak, as all-consuming as that was. It was something far more twisted, a web of deceit so intricate it made me question not just him, but my own judgment, my own family, everything. Let me take you back. 6 months ago. David and I were, well, we were that couple. You know the type. The ones whose Instagram posts make you feel a little bit sick with their perfection, or maybe a little bit hopeful. 5 years. We'd met in college, a classic eyes met across a crowded lecture hall during a particularly dull talk on postmodernism kind of deal. He was charming, effortlessly so, with this easygoing confidence that just drew you in like a tide. He had a laugh that could fill a room, and a way of making you feel like you were the only person in it. I was the quieter, more intense one, prone to overthinking, and he, I thought, balanced me out. He was my anchor, or so I thought. Our life was comfortable, a well-worn sweater. We had a cozy little apartment on the third floor of a brownstone, filled with mismatched furniture we'd collected and plants I struggled to keep alive. We shared a love for bad reality TV, the worse, the better, and a Sunday routine that involved strong coffee, the smell of pancakes, and long, meandering walks in the park, hand in hand. He'd leave little notes for me, stick figures with ridiculously oversized hearts tucked into my lunch bag or stuck to the bathroom mirror. He'd call me every single day on his way home from work, his voice a familiar comfort, just to hear about the minutiae of my day, the annoying colleague, the small victory. These were the building blocks of our love, the tiny, seemingly insignificant moments that made up the mosaic of our shared existence. Or so I believed with every fiber of my being. We talked about marriage, not in a pressured way, but as an assumed, happy future. We even had names picked out for a hypothetical golden retriever. It was all so settled, so safe. The cracks, I can see them now, of course. Hindsight is a cruel, illuminating beast, isn't it? It shines a spotlight on all the things you were too blind or too trusting to see. There were the late nights at work that started becoming more frequent, attributed to a demanding new project. The way he'd angle his phone away from me, just slightly, when a text came through, a subtle shift in his posture I'd barely registered at the time. The new, complex password on his laptop, which he brushed off as a new work security protocol, super boring stuff. I'm not a naturally suspicious person. I valued trust above almost anything. I gave trust. Freely, stupidly, as it turns out. I'd ask, a little niggle of worry in my voice. He'd have a plausible explanation delivered with that easy smile, and I'd let it go. Because the alternative, the idea that David, my David, the man who knew my every fear and dream, could be deliberately deceiving me, was too monstrous, too earth-shattering to even contemplate. It was easier to believe the lies. The day it all came crashing down started like any other Tuesday. Mundane, deceptively normal. I had a presentation at work, a big one I'd been stressing over for weeks. I was a bundle of nerves, replaying my opening lines in my head while trying to stomach some toast. David had been distant that morning. A quick peck on the cheek that barely landed, a mumbled, "Good luck," and he was out the door, already on his phone. I chalked it up to his own work stress. He'd been cagey about this new project he was supposedly swamped with, offering vague details and looking tired. My presentation actually went well. Surprisingly well. I was on a high, buzzing with relief and a sense of accomplishment I hadn't felt in ages. I decided to surprise David. I'd pick up some of those fancy almond croissants he loved from the bakery near his office and drag him out for a celebratory late lunch. I texted him, "Killed it. Presentation equals conquered. Thinking of kidnapping you for food and excessive praise. You free?" No reply. Odd. He usually replied quickly, even if it was just an emoji, but he could be in a deep focus meeting. I got to his office building, a sleek modern high-rise downtown, all glass and steel. His company, Innovate Solutions, occupied the 15th floor. As I walked towards the elevator bank, feeling a little thrill of anticipation about surprising him, his colleague, Sarah, a different Sarah, not my sister-in-law, this one a sharp, witty woman from his marketing team I'd met a few times at company parties, stepped out of an arriving elevator. "Oh, Anna, hi," she said, her voice a little too bright, her smile a little too wide. "Here to see David?" "Yeah, thought I'd surprise him with some post-presentation treats," I said, holding up the pastry bag. "Is he super slammed today?" Sarah's smile faltered for a millisecond, so quick I almost missed it. But my internal alarm, already faintly buzzing, pinged. Yeah, he's been really tied up." "Actually," she paused, her gaze flicking away for a second, "he's not in today. Called in sick this morning." Called in sick? That was new. He hadn't mentioned feeling unwell. Not a sniffle, not a cough. A little prickle of unease, sharp and unwelcome, started. "Oh, really?" "He seemed okay this morning, just a bit rushed. Hope it's nothing serious." "Yeah, probably just a 24-hour bug or something," Sarah said, still avoiding my direct gaze, shuffling her bag on her shoulder. "I should really get going. Deadline looming. Nice seeing you." And she practically scurried away towards the exit, leaving me standing there feeling strange. Something felt off. Really off. If he was sick, why hadn't he told me? Why wouldn't he be at home, in our bed, where I could bring him soup and fuss over him the way I always did? I pulled out my phone to call him, straight to voicemail. "Hey, it's David, leave a message." His cheerful, recorded voice felt like a taunt. Now the unease was morphing into a tight, cold knot in my stomach. I decided to head home. Maybe he'd gone home from work early, feeling awful, and his phone died. Yes, that had to be it. Rational explanations. I clung to them. Our apartment was silent when I let myself in, the kind of silence that feels too heavy. "David?" I called out, my voice echoing slightly in the stillness. No answer. I walked through the small hallway, my footsteps loud on the wooden floors. I checked the bedroom. Empty, the bed neatly made. The bathroom. Empty. His car was still in its usual spot in the parking garage downstairs. This was getting weirder, the rational explanations starting to fray at the edges. And then, I saw it. His work laptop, the one with the new, secret password, was on the kitchen counter, open, and next to it, his personal phone, screen up, unlocked. David never left his phone unattended, let alone unlocked. He was pathologically attached to it, like it was an extension of his arm. It was usually face down or in his pocket. My heart started to pound, a frantic drum against my ribs. This was it. This was the precipice. The moment where you either walk away, respecting privacy, clinging to blissful ignorance for a little while longer, or you look. Every instinct screamed at me. I looked. It was open to his texts. And there, at the very top, was a name I didn't recognize. Jessica, The heart emoji felt like a physical blow. The last message from her, sent just an hour ago while I was probably still high on my presentation success, read, Last night was amazing. Still can't believe this is happening. Can't wait for our weekend getaway. Room is booked. Below it, David's reply, sent from his phone. My David. Me neither. Counting down the minutes. She's completely clueless. Makes it even hotter, doesn't it? Doesn't. The pastry bag I was still holding, the almond croissants meant as a celebration, slipped from my numb grasp, scattering across the kitchen floor in a sickeningly sweet, buttery mess. She's completely clueless. She, that was me. I was the she in his sordid little adventure. Clueless. The word echoed in my head, mocking, cruel. Makes it even hotter. The casual cruelty of it stole my breath. The air left my lungs in a rush. My vision tunneled, the edges blurring to black. I physically stumbled back, my hip hitting the sharp edge of the counter. The sudden pain a distant pinprick compared to the gaping wound in my chest. The only sound in the room was my own ragged, shallow breathing, filling the sudden, crushing silence of our apartment. Our home. Our lie. The messages went back weeks, months even. Explicit texts detailing acts I couldn't even comprehend him doing with someone else. Plans for secret meetups, coded language about late meetings and business trips. Pet names I'd never heard him use. Inside jokes that weren't ours. An entire parallel life he was living, woven seamlessly and sickeningly into the fabric of the one we shared. There were pictures, pictures of them together, laughing in a bar I didn't recognize, him with his arm around her, her head on his shoulder. Kissing, not a peck, but a deep, passionate kiss. Pictures of her, artfully provocative, in hotel rooms with generic art on the walls. One picture made me gasp, a strangled, painful sound. It was of her, this Jessica, wearing my favorite silk robe, the teal one I'd saved up for months to buy. The one David had once said made me look like a goddess. She was smirking at the camera, a triumphant, proprietary look in her eyes. Each message, each photo, was a fresh stab to the heart, twisting the knife deeper. The betrayal wasn't just physical, it was emotional. It was a desecration of every memory, every shared glance, every whispered, I love you. It was all a lie. Our 5 years, the foundation of my adult life, a meticulously crafted, elaborate illusion. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen in that awful tableau, just scrolling, absorbing the poison, my mind struggling to process the sheer scale of his deception. It felt like an eternity, each second stretching out, filled with a fresh wave of nausea and disbelief. Then I heard his key in the door, the familiar jingle, a sudden, terrifying intrusion. He walked in, humming, a stupid, cheerful little tune that died in his throat when he saw me. Saw my face, which must have been a mask of horror. Saw his phone on the counter, its screen illuminated with his treachery. Saw the shattered pastries on the floor, a pathetic symbol of our ruined celebration. The color drained from his face, leaving him looking sallow and guilty. He knew. Oh, he knew I knew. Anna, he started, his voice barely a whisper, laced with a dawning panic. I've never known rage like it. It was a pure, white-hot inferno that consumed every other emotion, the shock, the grief, the confusion, burning them away until only fury remained. Who is Jessica? I asked, my voice dangerously calm, eerily steady, which seemed to scare him more than shouting would have. He flinched as if I'd struck him. Anna, I can explain. Explain? I laughed, a harsh, broken sound that didn't feel like my own. Explain what, David? Explain how you've been living a complete, disgusting double life? Explain how you've been laughing about me, your clueless girlfriend, behind my back with your whore? The word felt ugly and foreign on my tongue, but in that moment, I didn't care about propriety. I only cared about the searing pain. Don't call her that, he said, a flicker of something, protectiveness, defensiveness, in his eyes. For her, not for me. That was the moment something inside me irrevocably snapped. I wasn't thinking. I reacted. I picked up the nearest thing, a heavy ceramic vase, a housewarming gift from his mother, ironically, and hurled it with all my strength against the pristine white wall. It exploded into 1,000 pieces, much like my life, the sound deafening in the small kitchen. Get out, I screamed, the sound tearing from my throat, raw and ragged. Get out of my apartment. Get out of my life. Now. The argument that followed is a blur of accusations, his pathetic, stumbling denials that quickly crumbled under the weight of the evidence on his phone, his even more pathetic excuses, and more shouting. So much shouting. He tried to touch me, to reach for my arm, to calm me down with those hands that had touched her. I recoiled as if burned, slapping his hand away. It just happened, he pleaded, his eyes wide and desperate. It didn't mean anything. It was just physical. Didn't mean anything? I shrieked, the volume startling even myself. You built a whole other relationship. You told her you loved her. I read the texts, David, all of them. The plans for your weekend getaway. The disgusting photos. Did that mean nothing? His face crumpled. The charming, confident man I loved had vanished, replaced by this weak, deceitful stranger I didn't recognize. Okay, it got more serious than I intended, he mumbled, looking at the floor. More serious than you intended? The sheer audacity of that statement took my breath away. When you were texting her about how clueless I was and how that made your illicit encounters hotter, was that part of the not serious plan, David? Was humiliating me part of the fun? He had no answer to that. He just stood there, looking small and pathetic, the great love of my life reduced to a common cheat. He packed a bag, his hands shaking so badly he could barely zip it, occasionally muttering apologies that sounded hollow and rehearsed, even to my grief-stricken ears. He kept saying, I'm so sorry, Anna. I messed up so badly. I love you. Please, I love you. Love? The word was a mockery, a cruel joke. How could he even utter it after what I'd just seen? When he finally left, the door closing behind him with a soft click that sounded like a gunshot in the oppressive silence, the apartment felt instantly, overwhelmingly empty. I sank to the floor, amidst the scattered almond croissant flakes and the shards of broken ceramic, and I sobbed. Great, heaving, animalistic sobs that tore through me. I cried until my throat was raw, my eyes were swollen shut, and my body ached with the force of it. I cried for the man I thought he was, for the beautiful future I thought we had, for the utter blind fool I'd been. The next few days were a living hell, a blur of sleepless nights and tear-soaked days. I called in sick to work, unable to face the world, unable to string a coherent sentence together. I didn't eat. I barely slept, and when I did, I was plagued by nightmares filled with his face and hers, laughing. The apartment, our once cozy sanctuary, felt tainted, every object a painful reminder of his betrayal. His toothbrush still in the holder next to mine, his side of the bed still indented from where he'd slept, oblivious or uncaring, his scent lingering on his pillow, a scent that had once brought me comfort, now made me physically nauseous. I felt like I was drowning. My best friend, Chloe, was my lifeline. I called her the night it happened, my words a jumbled, hysterical mess of anguish and fury. She was there within 20 minutes, a whirlwind of righteous anger on my behalf, armed with a giant tub of cookie dough ice cream, 3 bottles of cheap red wine, and a fierce determination to protect me from further harm, and possibly from myself. She listened for hours, nodding, her eyes blazing with anger at David. She raged with me, calling him names I hadn't even thought of. She held me while I cried, stroking my hair and murmuring soothing nonsense. She also, practically, and with immense satisfaction, helped me change the locks on the apartment door the very next day. David's spare key was now useless. David, of course, tried calling, endlessly, texting, emailing, a barrage of desperate messages. Please talk to me, Anna. I made the biggest mistake of my life. We can fix this. I know we can. I ignored them all, the sight of his name on my phone screen sending fresh waves of sickness through me. Chloe became my digital gatekeeper, screening his messages, deleting the worst, and occasionally reading me one that was so ridiculously self-pitying it almost made me laugh. Almost. The darkness was still too thick for laughter, but the real surprise, the twist in this already sordid tale that I never saw coming, wasn't just the affair itself, as devastating as that was. It was who Jessica was. This wasn't just some random woman. The universe, it seemed, had a particularly cruel sense of irony. About a week into this waking nightmare, after I'd finally managed to shower, wash my hair, and put on clean clothes for the first time in what felt like an eternity, Chloe sat me down on my sofa. She had a grim, hesitant look on her face that immediately put me on edge. "Anna, there's something else," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "Something about Jessica." I braced myself, my stomach clenching. What now? Was she pregnant? Were they planning to move in together? Had David already replaced me in every aspect of his life? "I did some digging," Chloe confessed, a little sheepishly, but with an undercurrent of pride. "Okay, a lot of digging. Social media is a terrifyingly powerful tool in the hands of a scorned best friend with good Wi-Fi. Despite everything, a tiny, watery smile touched my lips. What did you find, Sherlock?" "Jessica. Her full name is Jessica Cartwright. The name meant nothing to me. Just a name, attached to a face I now loathed." "She's a photographer," Chloe continued, watching me carefully, gauging my reaction. "Specializes in family portraits, maternity shoots, newborns, that kind of thing." A cold dread started to creep up my spine, a chilling premonition. Where was this going? "David mentioned a new project at work, right? Super demanding, lots of late nights and weekend work he couldn't get out of." "Yeah," I whispered, my throat suddenly tight. He'd been so vague, so secretive about it. "Innovate Solutions doesn't have any new projects like that requiring that kind of secrecy or those hours. I have a friend who works there, on his actual team. David's been taking a lot of personal days and leaving early for weeks. And his big project, well, it seems Jessica Cartwright was recently hired by your brother Mark and his wife Sarah to do their maternity photos, and a full newborn package for when the baby arrives in a couple of months." The world tilted on its axis again, sending me reeling. Mark. My older brother, my protector, my childhood tormentor turned confidant. And his very pregnant wife, Sarah, my sister-in-law Sarah, not David's colleague, who was about 7 months along with their first child, my first niece or nephew, my family. The timing. David had been supposedly so busy and stressed with work around the exact same period Mark and Sarah had been excitedly telling us all about this wonderful artistic photographer they'd found, someone who was going to capture these precious, fleeting moments for them. "No," I whispered, shaking my head in denial. "No, it can't be. That's insane." Chloe just looked at me, her eyes full of pity and a shared anger. "Anna, according to her professional Instagram tags and some not-so-subtle glowing posts from Sarah herself, Jessica has been spending a lot of time at Mark and Sarah's house over the last month for consultations, pre-shoots, location scouting, you know, getting to know the family to capture their authentic essence. My family. My family's authentic essence being captured by the woman sleeping with my boyfriend." The pieces clicked into place with horrifying, sickening clarity. David hadn't met Jessica through some random dating app or a sleazy bar. He'd met her, most likely, through an introduction from my own family. He'd been seeing her, sleeping with her, whispering sweet nothings to her, while she was simultaneously working closely with my pregnant sister-in-law, planning to capture the most intimate and joyful moments of their new family's life. He had likely been in my brother's home, surrounded by my family's happiness and anticipation, with this woman, possibly even exchanging clandestine glances with her, all under the guise of supporting me as a loving boyfriend, or visiting them as a future uncle. The betrayal deepened, twisted, became something monstrous and far-reaching. It wasn't just me he'd deceived with such callousness. He'd implicated my unsuspecting family in his sordid mess, turned their happy anticipation for their first child into a potential source of scandal, embarrassment, and profound pain. The thought of Jessica, this viper, cooing over tiny baby clothes with my sweet, unsuspecting sister-in-law while simultaneously sleeping with her brother-in-law, it made me physically sick to my stomach. The anger returned, hotter and more focused than before. This wasn't just about a broken heart anymore, my personal tragedy. This was about my family, their trust, their vulnerability. I had to tell Mark. But how? How do you drop a bomb of that magnitude on your excited, expectant brother and his wife, who were in their own little bubble of baby joy? Hey, by the way, your baby photographer is sleeping with my boyfriend, your future uncle-in-law. Isn't that a fun fact? Before I could even begin to formulate a plan, David, in his infinite capacity for self-preservation and drama, forced my hand. He showed up at my work, unannounced, uninvited. I was just leaving for the day, feeling drained and fragile, but determined to reclaim some semblance of normalcy by actually completing a full day at the office, when I saw him standing by my car in the parking lot, looking like a kicked puppy. "Anna, please," he said, his voice hoarse, his eyes red-rimmed. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, but I felt no pity. "We need to talk, urgently." "We have nothing to talk about, David. I told you to leave me alone. How did you even know when I'd be leaving?" "It's about Jessica," he said, his voice low and conspiratorial, ignoring my question. She's threatening to tell Mark and Sarah everything. About us, about our arrangement. Unless I leave you officially and commit to her publicly, she wants a statement." I stared at him, dumbfounded. My mind struggled to process this new level of audacity. "She's threatening you? After you two willingly and enthusiastically?" "She's not who you think she is, Anna," he interrupted, his eyes darting around nervously. "She's manipulative. This whole thing spun out of control so fast. I never meant for it to go this far. I swear, I never meant to hurt you or your family." A bitter, incredulous laugh escaped me. "You really are something else, David. You orchestrate this entire disgusting affair. You lie to everyone for months. You get caught red-handed, and now you're the victim in all this?" "No, I'm not the victim. I know I'm not. I messed up, royally, catastrophically. But she's trying to blow up everything now. She thinks if she exposes it all, makes it a huge scandal, I'll have no choice but to be with her. She's even talking about how it would affect their photography contract, trying to imply she has some sort of professional leverage over them if they don't cooperate with her narrative." My mind reeled. This Jessica wasn't just some casual fling who got carried away. She sounded unhinged, vindictive, and she was actively trying to use my family, their vulnerability, as leverage in her twisted game with David. "So you came running to me?" I asked, my voice dripping with contempt. "What do you want me to do, David? Help you cover it up now? Protect you from the consequences of the mess you made with your mistress?" "No, I don't know what I want," he stammered, running a hand through his already disheveled hair. I thought you should know, before she does something crazy, before she hurts them." He looked genuinely scared, and for a fleeting, treacherous second, I almost felt a sliver of pity for the corner he'd backed himself into. Almost. But then the image of her wearing my robe flashed in my mind, and the pity vanished. "You need to tell Mark," I said, my voice firm, devoid of the emotion that was churning inside me. "You need to tell him everything before she does. You owe him that decency at least. You owe Sarah that." He looked horrified, his eyes widening. "Me? Tell Mark? He'll kill me. Literally, Anna, he will dismember me." "He'll find out eventually, David, one way or another. Better it comes from you, with whatever shred of honesty you can still possibly muster, than from a woman scorned who's clearly trying to blackmail you and hurt innocent people in the process." He just stood there, shaking his head, muttering, I can't do it." "Then I will," I said, my resolve hardening into steel. "I won't let that woman hurt my family, and I certainly won't let her use them as pawns in your pathetic psychodrama." That night, I did one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. My hands were shaking so much I could barely dial his number. I called Mark. I asked him and Sarah to come over to my apartment. I didn't tell them why over the phone, just that it was urgent, and I needed to talk to them in person. They arrived an hour later, their faces etched with concern, Sarah's baby bump prominent and beautiful under her maternity top. Seeing her happy, radiant, oblivious face as she walked in, asking if I was okay, nearly broke me. The guilt of what I was about to tell them was a heavy weight. I sat them down on the sofa, the same sofa where David and I had cuddled for countless movie nights, and with Chloe there for moral support, and to physically restrain Mark if necessary, she half joked. I told them. I told them about David's affair. And then, the hardest part, the part that made Sarah gasp and her hand fly to her mouth, I told them who Jessica was. The shock on their faces was agonizing to watch. Mark went deathly pale, then a dark, furious flush crawled up his neck. Sarah just started to cry, silent, heartbroken tears streaming down her face as she clutched her belly. That, that woman has been in our home, Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. She held the tiny outfits we bought for Lily. She talked about how much she loved capturing family beginnings and the miracle of new life. Her voice broke on a sob. Mark was on his feet, pacing the small living room like a caged tiger. I'm going to kill him. I swear to God, Anna, I'm going to actually kill him, and then I'll deal with her. Mark, please, I said, my own voice shaking, though a primal part of me understood his rage. Violence won't solve anything. What matters now is protecting yourselves, and the baby, from any more fallout. We talked for hours that night. There were more tears, a lot of anger, waves of disbelief. Sarah was understandably worried about the photos, the contract they'd signed with Jessica, the significant deposit they'd already paid. Mark was fixated on David's betrayal of trust, not just to me, but to their friendship, to the family. I just felt numb, hollowed out, but also strangely lighter. The toxic secret was out. I wasn't carrying its crushing weight alone anymore. The aftermath with my family was messy, as expected. Mark did confront David. I wasn't there, thankfully, but Chloe heard from a mutual acquaintance that it was loud, explosive, and nearly came to blows in a public coffee shop. David, to his minimal credit, if you can even call it that at this point, apparently admitted everything when confronted directly by Mark. He didn't try to hide or blame Jessica entirely for initiating it, though he did emphasize her manipulative behavior later. Mark and Sarah, understandably and immediately, fired Jessica. They lost their deposit, which stung, but they found another photographer quickly, someone highly recommended by a trusted friend who was thankfully available. Jessica, true to David's fear and her apparent nature, did try to cause trouble. She sent Mark and Sarah a series of nasty, unprofessional emails, threatening to slander them online, and even posted some vague, passive-aggressive things on her business social media about unprofessional clients who break contracts and the difficulties of artistic integrity. But Chloe, my digital warrior angel, helped document everything meticulously and even drafted a stern cease and desist letter through a lawyer friend of hers, which, thankfully, seemed to shut Jessica up for good. As for David and Jessica, from what I pieced together through the grapevine, because I had blocked David on every conceivable platform and had no desire for direct updates, their twisted romance imploded spectacularly once her blackmail attempts failed, and David apparently realized she was, in his eventual words, to a mutual friend who relayed them to Chloe, completely psycho and obsessed. He apparently tried to crawl back to me again a few weeks later, leaving a pathetic, tear-soaked, multi-page letter on my doorstep. I didn't even open it. Chloe, with great ceremony, burned it in her backyard barbecue pit during what she dubbed a toxic energy cleansing ritual. It was strangely satisfying to watch the smoke curl into the sky. The months that followed were about rebuilding. Not my relationship with David, that was dead, buried, and had a tombstone carved with his lies, but rebuilding me. I threw myself into work with a renewed focus, earning a promotion I hadn't even been actively seeking. I reconnected with friends I'd unintentionally neglected during my 5 years absorbed in the David bubble. I started therapy, which was incredibly, unexpectedly helpful in untangling the messy knot of emotions. The profound grief for the future I'd lost, the simmering anger at his duplicity, the crushing feeling of being utterly stupid and naive for so long. My therapist helped me see that his choices were about his failings, not mine. The biggest surprise, though, the one I truly never anticipated, was something I discovered about myself in the quiet solitude of my new, David-free life. In the quiet moments, when the rage and sadness finally began to subside, retreating like a tide, I realized that for a long time, perhaps even a year or more before the implosion, I hadn't been truly, deeply happy with David. I'd been comfortable. I'd been secure. I'd been in love with the idea of us, the shared history, the future we'd meticulously planned, the 5-year investment I was terrified to lose. But looking back with brutally honest eyes, his increasing distance, his subtle but persistent criticisms of me, my own quiet, unacknowledged anxieties about our lack of deep conversation in recent times, they were all signs that the foundation was already crumbling. His betrayal was horrific, a demolition ball to my life, but it was also a violent, unwelcome catalyst for an escape I probably needed, but was too afraid or too complacent to initiate myself. My relationship with Mark and Sarah, paradoxically, grew stronger through this ordeal. We'd been through something awful together, a shared trauma that stripped away any pretense, and it bonded us in a new, deeper way. When my beautiful niece, Lily, was born 3 months later, healthy and screaming her lungs out, holding her tiny, perfect form for the first time was like a balm to my wounded soul. Here was this perfect, innocent new beginning, a tangible symbol of hope, love, and family resilience. Sarah, bless her heart and her wicked sense of humor, even joked during one late-night feeding session that I was now the official cool aunt who would teach Lily how to spot a loser from a mile away and how to properly key a car if necessary. We both laughed until we cried. Life, as it does, moved on. The sharp, jagged edges of the pain began to dull, smoothed over by time and new experiences. I moved to a new apartment, a bright, airy space on the other side of town, a place that was all mine, filled with my things, my colors, my energy. No ghosts of David lurked in those corners. I started saying yes to things I would have said no to before, solo weekend trips, that salsa class I'd always wanted to try, reconnecting with my own passions. I started dating again, cautiously at first, like dipping a toe into uncertain waters. There were a few duds, of course, a few hilariously bad dates that provided great fodder for Chloe, a few pleasant evenings, nothing serious. I wasn't looking for serious. I was rediscovering myself, what I wanted, what I valued, not what we wanted. And then, about a year after D-Day, Discovery Day, as Chloe and I morbidly, but accurately still call it, something truly unexpected and lovely happened. I was at a local outdoor art fair, wandering among the stalls, something I'd never have dragged David to. He'd have complained about the crowds and the pretentious artists. I was admiring a piece of pottery, a beautiful abstract vase with a stunning turquoise glaze, ironically given what I'd done to his mother's, when I heard a voice next to me. "That's a stunning glaze, isn't it? Reminds me of the Aegean Sea." I turned. He was tall, with kind, crinkly eyes that suggested he smiled a lot, and a genuinely gentle smile on his face right then. We started talking, easily, about art, then about books we'd both read, then about hiking trails, then about everything and nothing. His name was Ben. He was a landscape architect. He made me laugh, a real, genuine, belly-aching laugh that reached my eyes and made my cheeks hurt. There was no immediate, dramatic bolt of lightning, no overwhelming, this is the one movie moment. Just a quiet, easy, comfortable connection that felt refreshing, safe. He asked for my number as the fair was closing down. I hesitated for only a second, a brief flicker of old fear, before giving it to him. We went for coffee a few days later. He listened more than he talked, really listened, asking thoughtful questions that showed he was genuinely interested in my answers. He didn't once make me feel like I needed to be anyone other than myself, unfiltered and a little bit bruised from life. It felt different, healthier. It's still early days with Ben. I'm not rushing into anything. I'm not trying to build a new future on the rubble of the old one before the dust has even settled. The scars from David are still there, faint, silvery reminders of a battle fought and survived. But they don't hurt to the touch anymore. They're just part of my story, part of the tapestry of who I am now. My world did turn upside down that day. It was chaotic, painful, and utterly terrifying. But in a strange, unexpected way, when it finally righted itself, I found myself standing on more solid, authentic ground. I found strength I didn't know I possessed. I found a deeper appreciation for the incredible friends and family who rallied around me. And I found that even after the most devastating betrayals, life can and does offer new beginnings, often in the most unexpected of places, when you least expect them. The biggest surprise of all, realizing that the end of that chapter, as brutal and soul-destroying as it was, wasn't the end of my story. It was the painful, messy, but ultimately necessary prologue to a much better one. One where I'm the sole author, holding the pen, and finally choosing the narrative. So yeah, that's what happened. It's a lot, I know. It's still a lot for me to process sometimes. And if you're out there, going through something similar, feeling like your world has just imploded, please know you're not alone. And as cliche and infuriating as it sounds when you're in the thick of it, it does get better. You get better. You get stronger. And sometimes the most unexpected, painful detours lead you exactly where you were meant to be, to a version of yourself you couldn't have imagined before. Thanks for listening.